In this video, we'll show the titration of ascorbic acid. On the workbench, we see the various different solutions that we prepared in previous steps. Now, to do a titration, we're going to require some glassware. The biggest thing that we're going to need is a burette. So if I go to glassware, other, I can click a 50 milliliter burette. Now here is our stock solution that we produced and created previously. Note that this stock solution is going to have a different concentration than your stock solution, as I just used a random amount of potassium iodate to create the solution in a previous step. When we're doing any kind of lab, it's really important not to make any mistakes. Some mistakes can be so big in a chemistry lab that you would actually have to redo the experiment. Since we're doing this lab virtually, we do have some advantages. One advantage is that we can duplicate some of the solutions that we'll be using later on in the lab. And I would highly recommend that you duplicate your stock solution. That way, if you mess up your titration, you always have that initial stock solution that you had previously and could redo your titration. It is possible to run out of this if you didn't create a duplicate. So that's what we're going to be doing here. Note when you're doing these steps, there isn't a way to go backwards. It's kind of like a real lab in that way, but having this duplicate can kind of act as a little bit of a cheat and allow us to redo steps if we really needed to. So our first step is going to be filling up our burette. I'm going to take our stock solution here and I'm going to drag it over to the burette. And you're going to have to pour in a certain volume. I said between 45 milliliters and 50 milliliters. I'm going to go with 50. So I'll enter 50 under the precise tab and go pour. And what you'll see here is you'll see that the burette is going to fill up. Now, when we're looking at the markings on the burette, this is 2 milliliters, this is 3 millimeters. Each one of these lines here is 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4, and 2.5, so on and so forth. So when you are reading the volume from your burette, you can always estimate 1 decimal place further than what you can read on the marking on your burette. So these are graduations tell us to the 10th of a milliliter, so we can estimate a solution to 100th of a milliliter or to 2 decimal places. So our first step is going to be to write down our initial reading of our burette. This is the initial volume of our potassium iodate solution, and in my case, it's 2.00 milliliters of KiO3. So I'm going to take a note of that and mark that down. So I've got that. I've got my burette totally filled up, which is perfect. I'm going to put this over here, and then I'm going to have to grab a sample of ascorbic acid. So I'm going to grab my ascorbic acid. I'm going to put it right over here, and it's important when you're doing this, you have to add the burette to the ascorbic acid. So I have to take this piece right here and move it over into here. So if we've done that correctly, now we see the ascorbic acid is below our burette. Our initial reading on our burette is 50.00 milliliters, and our initial reading here is 2.00 milliliters of potassium iodate. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add drop by drop some volume of the burette, of our titrant, into this ascorbic acid. So what you'll notice is right now I'm going to start with a pretty big value. I'm adding 0.01 milliliters. I would recommend when you're doing your titration to add 0.01 milliliters. And what you'll see is when you pour it, this amount of liquid in our burette is going to go down. It's going into the ascorbic acid, and this volume will increase. But since I'm going to try to do this in a little bit quicker manner and have done this before, I'm going to add it at the start at 0.1. So what you'll see is I'm going to pour. I'm going to keep on adding this stock solution, our potassium iodate, from our burette, and it's going drop by drop into the ascorbic acid, and this volume is increasing. And I'm going to continue to do this until I see a color change in our ascorbic acid sample. Once I see a color change, I know I've reached the end point of my titration, and I'll have to record my final volume of potassium iodate that I used. So I'm going down, and like I said, I've done this before, so I can go a little bit quicker than you might be able to go. So I'm keeping adding this, and this shows you where we are on our burette. So I'm going to keep on going down like this until I reach the point where I'm really close to where I know the endpoint is. And I know the endpoint is right around this range. So I'm going to now switch to adding only 0.01 milliliters of my potassium iodate. And I'm going to add this very slowly until I see that color change. Now remember, when we're doing a titration in a lab, we would get a little bit of an indicator beforehand. We'd see a flash of color or a flash of blue in the Erlenmeyer flask right here, letting us know that we're coming very close to the endpoint of our titration. Now in this virtual lab, we don't have that benefit, so I'm going to go very slowly so that I can get the most accurate results possible, and I'm looking for a color change right down here. So I'm going to do that and keep going. There we go. We have that color change. What I need to do now is I need to write down the final volume of our ascorbic acid right here. Final volume of our potassium iodate in our burette. So taking a look at this value right here, it's 18.1.2, so we're at 18.2, and this meniscus right here is not quite on the line. It's slightly below. So I would estimate this volume to be 18.21, and I'd write that down for my volume of potassium iodide that I have titrated. So that is perfect. I've done that. I'm going to end this right here, and I'm going to write down some volumes. I'm going to write down the final volume that I did, and I'm going to record that on my chart. So there we go. We've got that done. I'm going to grab and remove my burette because I don't need it anymore. And I'm going to grab a new burette. I'm going to bring this over here. I'm going to remove this stock solution that we used before. And now I'm going to duplicate this one, because then I'm going to have another sample of stock solution for my next titration. So I'm going to do the exact same steps. I'm going to take this. I'm going to add this over here. I'm going to go down, add my 50 milliliters. Pour it, record my value right here, take this value over here, go up, and then grab my second piece, or my second Erlenmeyer flask of ascorbic acid. So what we need to do is position this over here, get the ascorbic acid so that we can see it, and then drag the burette over to where this Erlenmeyer flask is so that they're all lined up. I'll again record that initial concentration of potassium iodide and then start my titration. And like I said, I would recommend you add 0.01 drops at a time and keep on going. So we'll go like this until you see that other color change. So you'll do that for all three samples. You'll make sure that you record your initial volume of potassium iodate, your final volume of potassium iodate, and then how much using those values potassium iodate you actually used for that titration. Okay, that's what you're going to need to do for this titration of ascorbic acid.